say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Please be seated. It's been an exciting semester so far in regards to MBA campus and the military. So far we've had a Cobra and a Huey land on Andrews Field, and I thought you all might like to watch this slow motion video of that. It was a lot of fun to see this kind of gorgeous day and for everybody to go out on Andrews Field and circle around. And it was funny, while we were out there, I saw Greg Farrell, who was giving a tour with a St. Paul family that I knew. And so I went up to him and said, yeah, we do this every day. We just have helicopters land. But it was a lot of fun. And last week, Ty Chandler was awarded the Army All-American, and so the Army was here and had, in fact, in this exact spot, and was honoring him for the great work both on and off the football field that he's done. We've had Army veteran and Nashville native Majori Eastman, who's written the book titled Frontline Generation. Spoke to our Men of Character group, and that was a great reflection from her. So there's been a lot of good connections with the military this semester, and the military ethos is so similar to the ideals that are encouraged at MBA: selflessness, courage, sacrifice, loyalty to your brother, self-discipline, honor. And it is therefore no surprise that the walls of this room are lined with many men who have taken the oath and have joined the military. As I reflect, after all, the military is a piece of cake compared to Coach Simpson's Christmas practices. And after about 6 themes a year, we can certainly certify that MBA students should be deployment ready in their hard work. But as we reflect on 150 years of MBA, it is especially humbling to think about how many young men that MBA produced ready to serve their country, beginning with Sam Davis out in the statue outside the library, and continuing all the way to a lot of the seniors who helped out this morning with the lapel pins as you came in. Ryan Cosson, Holland Lung, Luke Burge, and many others who have a desire to serve and stay close to the military in meaningful ways and aspire to do ROTC and serve in other ways. So MBA has a wonderful legacy of military service, and as I see Sam Garner is here from Fort Campbell, and Mike Sartain, both in the same Special Forces group. In my opinion, there's no clearer manifestation of the MBA values than through the young man who raised their right hand to take their oath in military service. And so it's truly inspiring to work with these young men and hear the determination and commitment and sense of duty that they have to dedicate their lives to our country and serve something that's greater than themselves. So our time this morning is meant to be an opportunity to reflect on these things and to recognize the service and reflect on our nation's military and our nation's veterans and the gratitude that we have for that. Please raise your hand if you are on active duty right now serving in the military. I think it's just Sam. Let's give him a round of applause. Please raise your hand if you are a veteran of our armed forces. Let's give this group a round. Please raise your hand if you are a parent of somebody who is currently on active duty that couldn't make it today. So we honor these groups, and thank you for your service, and thank you for joining us as we pause to reflect on these people's service to our nation. And so we're going to pause now and just have a moment of silence and reflect on these things. And Ben Patterson will conclude the moment of silence with taps, and then we'll follow up by the MBA Choir leading us in the Band of Brothers theme song. So please join me in taking a moment of silence.
Good morning. My name is Nick Sartain and I'm a senior here at MBA. This week on campus has been a very special week for me. I, along with a few other seniors, have been fundraising for two great organizations. These two organizations are called Operation Stand Down and Task Force Dagger. These two organizations both assist veterans with medical and financial needs. Operation Stand Down is a local organization based in Nashville that is the only veteran service center to be recognized by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs. This is a great honor to have, and it's a great local organization to have in Tennessee. Task Force Dagger, on the other hand, is spread across the nation. Task Force Dagger helps U.S. Special Forces soldiers in need. This includes immediate assistance, recreational therapy events, and advanced medical treatment. Both these organizations hold a special place in my heart. They do tremendous things for our veterans. Having a father who served for 23 years in the military, I've seen the struggles that veterans face. These veterans have given so much for this country, and many have paid the ultimate sacrifice. To all the veterans who have served, are serving, and will serve, thank you. Thank you for serving so I can live in a free world, and I can raise children who live in a free world. Thank you. Thank you for your love for this country, and thank you for everything you've given. And now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker. Mr. John Carter graduated from MBA's class of 1984. Mr. Carter served in the Long-Range Surveillance Detachment of the 101st Airborne, which is a U.S. Army Modular Light Infantry Division trained for air assault operations. He had a tremendous impact on the conservation movement, founding both a Brazilian conservation nonprofit organization and a wildland firefighter organization. Please help me in welcoming Mr. John Carter to MBA.
Good morning. It's a great honor. It's also very humbling. As a veteran, we know that there's always someone tougher. There's always someone who's done more than we have. And I think that's part of the warrior ethos. I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, and as a little kid growing up in a military town, I was surrounded by giants. I was surrounded by men that had a profound impact on me. There was George Campman, Big George as I call him. He had served in the Texas Division in France and Germany. He'd seen hell. He'd been in the Battle of the Bulge, and I can remember hunting and shooting my first deer at his ranch. We had it strung up behind his ranch house, and he came around the corner and saw it, and saw the blood, and fainted. I didn't quite understand it. My dad said, "Son, Big George has a problem. Don't worry about it." I can remember Paul Tudyk served in the Korean War. I can remember my Uncle Gus, who served in World War I, couldn't go to the 4th of July because of the fireworks. He'd hit the ground every time they went off. So those experiences had a profound impact on me as a kid. I realized there was something to the vets. There's an aura to them, and I couldn't quite figure it out. Then I find myself at the University of Texas senior year, looking at my own family's lineage in the military, and it was April, and I said, you know what? And I just finished reading a book called Eyes of the Eagle by Gary Linderer. He was a LERP. He was in Lehman Company 75th Rangers, which is the Eyes of the Eagle, the 101st Airborne. And those guys were my heroes. I read the book, last page, got up, walked out, went to the recruiter, and I enlisted. And I called my family. I said, "You did what?" They said, "Why don't you go to OCS?" I said, I want to be a LERP. And I didn't really realize that they didn't have those anymore. They'd put the Rangers into battalions, but I went into a 4-year Airborne Ranger contract and ended up a little bit later, a very fortuitous trail at the very unit that I wanted to be in, which was Long Range Surveillance 101st. I got there on August 2nd, and after they smoked me for a couple of days and hazing me and running me and putting me into a team, I became senior scout in Team 4, 6 men. Our unit was six-man reconnaissance teams, 56 men total, 20 were support and 36 were recon. Saddam invaded Kuwait. And so within 2 weeks, I found myself seated in a C-5 Galaxy headed to Saudi Arabia, with men I didn't even know. We landed in the desert in 125-degree heat. I remember when the tail came up on the C5 and that wave of heat, it was like being in an oven. And it never went away. It never got better. We didn't have, of course, the hardships of the military, especially the infantry. we had no support. We were thrown out in the middle of nowhere, 8 MREs for months and months and months. We started doing missions along the Kuwaiti border and Iraqi border, surveillance missions primarily. And with always that constant fear that Saddam was going to invade. We were the first 500 ground troops, so being 6 men out in the Wadi al-Batin waiting along the border, buried in the sand, you did get a little bit anxious and fearful. And I'll never forget the first mail call that was delivered by helicopter to where we were. And there was a big bundle of letters, and they were tied with twine. It said, "To Lurch soldiers." And they were written by Lima Company's 75th Rangers. And so they distributed one out to each soldier. And I got one and I opened it up. It was from a guy named Randy from Arkansas, Fayetteville, or Hot Springs. And it was poetry. And it was his wisdom as a combat veteran trying to tell the next generation what to expect. And my lip quivers. Excuse me. So that went on for months, and it had a profound impact on my unit, and that bond still exists today. It was February, months later, and we were being inserted, we were flying into Black Hawk into Iraq. And it was me and my 5 team members, Sergeant Thomas, Sergeant Easler, Derek Hart. He was ATM RTO. FM RTO was Clinton Doris, and then myself, Senior Scout, and then Sawyer. And by then we were the most efficient team in the military, so we thought. And we landed at a place called, it was fortuitous because we were all Texans. 4 out of 6 were Texans. We had 2 Yankees on the team, but we put up with them. We landed at a place called the Area of Operation Texas, which was a staging point for the assault of the 18th Airborne Corps into western Iraq. And we were going there because we were going to do a pre-mission briefing before being inserted behind enemy lines, approximately 120 clicks or kilometers up along the Euphrates River that night. We landed right as this shamal came up, a dust storm, and the horizon, as far as you could see, was solid red with billows of clouds of dust coming towards us. Visibility was about half a mile. It was surreal, and it was really hard to believe that we'd be flying in those conditions with 30, 40 mile per hour gusting winds. We walked into the command tent, where there was just a few officers there to do our pre-mission briefing, and the pilots were there too, and the pilots were all jittery. They just gotten intelligence that there were, in our flight route hadn't been bombed or there's been no preparation for this assault to keep it secret, and that there was a whole line of ZSU 23-4s, which are anti-aircraft artillery, in our flight route where we meeting started that night. And they didn't want to fly us in, and they were clamoring with the other officers saying this is stupid. And so the fear set in. And so my team leader took us aside and to get us away from that negativity and said, all right, check your gear. So we had about 128 pounds of gear that we had to carry. And we go through our 8 mags of 5.56, our six fragmentary grenades, 2 smoke grenades, 1 claymore mine, the PRC radio, the SATCOM, the binos, the spotting scope, 1 claymore mine, and then at the end, throw in a couple of MREs. You're gonna need to eat something for the next 3 days. So we took, I think, 2 MREs apiece for 3-day mission, which we weren't going to sleep during that time too. And finally, the call came. It was dark 30, pitch dark. That's when the bats fly. And we went out to the Black Hawk, got in, shut the door. because of the wind, and the pilot looked over his shoulder and said, "Who the hell are you? Why do you want to do this? Everything we're doing is trying to stop this mission. Why do you want to go?" And we said, "Sir, it's our job." As soon as we said that, the fear set in, the butterflies in your stomach. And I took off my floppy hat, and I had a letter from Randy that had stuck up in there. And I turned it over, got my flashlight, and read it. And then I said a prayer, and the fear vanished instantly. And an aggressive confidence took its place. So we lifted off, and we were headed north. We were the furthest ground combat troops in theater. We would be in about an hour. We no longer than 10 minutes after we took off, the helicopter took a 90-degree bank, and this alarm was beeping and blaring actually in the helicopter, and the pilot said missile, or RPG, we weren't sure which. And I can remember banking and seeing with my nods, my night vision, antennas. We were flying over some Iraqi positions, and we were so damn close to the ground that we could see the antennas from the tanks on top. And then we got up to our insertion point. I'm senior scout. My job is to, with all the emotion and all the energy and all the stress, I had to remember azimuth, pace count, and what we're going to be doing. And you had to remember 1, and then 2, and then 3, and alternate 1, and alternate 2, and alternate 3. And you never think that you're going to use them. The first LZ was hot. We flew to the second LZ. We were one bird in a false insertion ship, which would fake it was empty. And then we had 2 Apache attack helicopters escorting us. And we went to the second LZ, and it was hot. And then went to the third LZ, and we got out, and the helicopters flared, and we jumped into the mud. We jumped out with 120 pounds of gear with our weapons, and we sank to our knees in mud. And we got stuck. And the helicopter took off and left, and I could hear my team leader talking to Doris, said, "Doris, contact them on the radio. They're supposed to be in a circuit, holding pattern," and they left. And I stuck there in the mud, and I just had to giggle at myself because the last letter from Randy was talking about mud and flies in Vietnam. And I said, who would have thought in the middle of Iraq that I'd be stuck to my knees in mud? Of course, we got out and looked into the darkness, and off we went with the confidence that we would succeed. And that's the American military. A few months later, landed at Fort Campbell. We were on the plane coming back. We're all enlisted men, and I'll never forget my captain, Captain Clark. He's the commander of the 82nd Airborne now. Before he was at West Point. Before he'll be something even bigger. He was a hell of a man, and he came back and said, "Guys, you get up in the front. We're going to kick those damn officers out of first class." And so he kicked the officers out and sat us down in first class and treated us like kings. And we landed at Fort Campbell and had a hero's welcome. Went to the barracks after we said hi to our family. We lived in the last World War II barracks at Fort Campbell, well on the east side of Post. And we went to go turn in our weapons, which would have been by our sides, in our hands for 11 months. Never left them, ever. It becomes like it's your lover. And turning in the weapons to the armor, I heard this screaming and yelling and this cussing and profanity, and somewhere in the middle was my name. "Carter, you blankety blank." Carter, I said, "Okay, what did I do wrong now?" And all these soldiers said, "You got to go to the bay room." So I went in the bay room. I went in. I saw this 40-something-year-old man in civilian clothes, and it was profound, and it was Randy. And he had driven from Arkansas. He'd found out the day we were getting back. He had driven to make sure that I got a thank you. He didn't get one. He didn't get one. So he ran up to me, saw my name tag, and he hugged me. And he said, "Brother, I love you." And he goes, "I've been waiting for you." And I got goosebumps. I said, "Randy, I joined the Army because of you. I joined the Army because of you. I don't know what to say." And he says, "I do." He says, "Go back to your family and tell them you love them. And I'm getting out of here." I said, "No, you can't." He goes, "I'm getting out of here." I've never seen him again. But that experience with Randy, it was truly an American experience. He gave to me my time of need. He helped me through a tough time, and I helped him heal. And by saying thank you to him for his service, we became part of a brotherhood that goes back to the Revolution, that makes America great. There's no doubt about it. That's the brotherhood. And I think that's what's so profound about it. I look back at those old men back in Texas, and you could see it in their eye. There was something to them. And now I know what it is. They've done their job. America, freedom doesn't come for free, and it demands sacrifice on the battlefield and rigor and citizenship to maintain it. It's a collective partnership of society is what it is. And when we got back and went back into our lives, I look at my team members who I love dearly. Doris went on the NASA. He went to this horrible school called Texas A&M, which I hate him, and got his engineering degree, went on the NASA, and became deputy commander of the space station project. Look at Brian Easler, who went to Columbia, got his degree in English, and now he's the headmaster of a very prestigious boarding school in Massachusetts, much like MBA. I look at Kelly Mahan, who went on 18 years in Special Forces, 5th Group, 3rd Battalion. He's an iconic Green Beret. I asked him to come lead our firefighters in Brazil, and he said, "Buddy, that's a fight worth fighting." It's a fight worth fighting. So when I look at MBA, like Will Norton said, MBA was, I believe the first headmaster was General Kirby Smith, who'd been a West Point grad himself. His dad had fought in the Revolution. So MBA was founded with those principles that make America great. And I think that that's the message I want to give to the folks today is that the military is not over here and citizens aren't over here. We're actually together. And what I saw in the eyes of those combat vets, that they did their part. And MBA to these guys is giving them the skills to go into the civilian world and do their part too. And all I can tell you is you better do it because America needs it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John Carter, for coming back to campus and speaking to all of us here today. It's truly an honor to have you back here with us. Thank you to all the students, the faculty and staff, and guests for coming to this special ceremony. Thanks especially to all of you who have served or are currently serving in the military. The sacrifices that you have made, and to a certain extent that your families have made as well, for our freedom are immeasurable. We invite everyone to visit the memorial ground placards which have been placed along the walkway to the library. These placards honor MBA alumni who have died while serving their country during wartime. This marks the end of the ceremony. Thank you again for coming and have a wonderful day. God bless you all. God bless our veterans and God bless our country.